From the National Anti-Scam Centre found Australians lost $945 million to investment scams last year.
Phone scams are nothing new, but thanks to artificial intelligence, they are getting more sophisticated and more believable.
Right, scams are popping up everywhere, right? And AI is making it easier for people to dupe.
It started with a phone call. A British engineering company received a call from their CEO. His voice, his accent, his cadence, his specific, recognisable way of pronouncing certain words. He needed an urgent wire transfer, $243,000, to a supplier in Hungary. Immediately. Sensitive situation. Do not discuss with anyone else. The financial officer wired the money within the hour.
With one cybersecurity client officer for Wells Fargo saying artificial intelligence has made some scams more sophisticated.
The CEO had never made that call. He was sitting in his office when it happened, in a different country, completely unaware. The voice that authorized a $250,000 transfer was a real-time artificial intelligence clone of his vocal pattern, trained on publicly available recordings, deployed in a live phone call, and executed so perfectly that a trained professional who had worked with this man for years could not tell the difference. This was not 2024. This was not cutting-edge classified technology. This happened in 2019. According to a Wall Street Journal investigation published that year, it was one of the first documented cases of AI voice cloning used in a financial fraud scheme. That was 5 years ago. What the criminals have built since then would make that 2019 attack look like a rough draft.
Now with AI, this can be done in just minutes. And to give you an idea of the scale of the problem,
according to the Federal Trade Commission's 2024 Consumer Sentinel Network report, Americans lost over $10 billion to fraud in 2023, the highest figure ever recorded in the agency's history. According to the financial intelligence firm Nasdaq Verafin's 2024 Global Financial Crime Report, total global fraud losses across financial systems exceeded $485 billion in 2023. And according to cybersecurity firm Recorded Future's 2025 Threat Intelligence Analysis, the acceleration of AI-enabled fraud is not linear. It is exponential. The tools are getting better, faster than the defenses against them. We are at the beginning of something that the financial system is not prepared for, and the gap between what the criminals can do and what the institutions protecting you can stop is widening every single month. This is that story. Chapter 1. The weaponization of trust. To understand why AI fraud is so devastatingly effective, you first have to understand what fraud has always been about. At its core, it has never been about technology. It has always been about trust. Every scam in history, from the confidence tricks of the 19th century to the telephone fraud of the 20th, has operated by manufacturing the appearance of a trustworthy relationship or authority. You trust your bank. You trust your boss. You trust your government. You trust the voice of someone you love. Fraud exploits that trust by impersonating the thing you trust most in the moment you are least likely to question it. For most of history, impersonation had natural limits. You could not perfectly replicate someone's voice without years of practice. You could not create a convincing fake video of a known individual without a studio budget. You could not generate thousands of personalized, grammatically perfect deceptive messages simultaneously. The effort required to manufacture high-quality trust was the natural barrier that kept fraud at a manageable scale. Artificial intelligence has destroyed that barrier. According to research from cybersecurity firm Pindrop's 2024 Voice Intelligence Report, voice cloning technology has advanced to the point where a convincing replica of any human voice can be generated from as little as 3 seconds of audio. 3 seconds. A voicemail, a snippet of a YouTube video, a fragment of a podcast interview. That is all a criminal needs to build a weapon that sounds exactly like someone you trust completely. According to deepfake detection firm Sensity AI's 2024 annual report, the volume of deepfake video content identified online increased by 900% between 2019 and 2024. 900%. And according to the same Sensity AI research, the majority of that content is not being created for entertainment or political disinformation. The fastest growing application category is financial fraud. The technology that Hollywood spent millions of dollars and months of production time to achieve in the early 2000s can now be executed by a motivated criminal with a consumer laptop, an internet connection, and software that costs less than $20 a month. Trust, the foundation of every financial relationship in the world, has been made artificially replicable, and the institutions built on that trust are not ready. Chapter 2. The anatomy of a modern AI scam. Let us walk through what a sophisticated AI-enabled fraud operation actually looks like in 2025. Not hypothetically, based on documented cases from law enforcement and financial intelligence reporting. It begins with intelligence gathering. According to cybersecurity firm CrowdStrike's 2025 Global Threat Report, modern fraud operations begin with weeks or months of open-source intelligence collection on the target. Scraping LinkedIn profiles, corporate websites, social media, news articles, earnings call recordings, podcast appearances, and any publicly available audio or video of the individuals to be impersonated. This is not manual work. It is AI automated profiling at industrial scale. The profile that emerges is extraordinarily detailed. The target's organizational relationships, their communication style, their typical vocabulary, their known associates, their financial authority within their institution, their psychological pressure points, deadlines, performance anxieties, hierarchical dynamics that can be exploited to create urgency and suppress the instinct to verify. Then comes the impersonation layer. According to the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center 2024 annual report, business email compromise, where criminals impersonate executives or vendors to authorize fraudulent transactions, cost American businesses over $2.9 billion in 2023 alone. The AI evolution of this attack does not just spoof an email address. It generates email content in the precise writing style of the impersonated executive, learned from analysis of their actual communication patterns. It creates voice messages that sound exactly like them. In the most sophisticated documented cases, it deploys real-time voice cloning in live phone calls, exactly as happened in the 2019 British engineering case, but with 5 more years of technological refinement. Then comes the psychological engineering. According to research from the Stanford Internet Observatory on social engineering in AI-enabled fraud, the most effective attacks combine technical impersonation with precise psychological pressure, creating situations of urgency, confidentiality, and authority that are specifically calibrated to the target's known behavioral patterns. You are not receiving a generic phishing email anymore. You are receiving a communication that knows your name, your role, your relationships, your current projects, and your specific psychological triggers. and it is asking you for exactly the thing you have the authority to provide. According to the Financial Times investigation into AI fraud published in early 2025, a single fraud syndicate operating out of Southeast Asia was identified as having used AI tools to execute over 10,000 individual fraud attempts across 14 countries in a single quarter, simultaneously, automatically, with each attempt personalised to its specific target. 10,000 attacks, 1 quarter, 1 operation. This is not crime at human scale anymore. This is crime at machine scale, and the machines are very good at it. Chapter 3. The deepfake that cost $25 million. In February 2024, a story broke that should have dominated financial news for months. A finance worker at a multinational firm in Hong Kong was contacted by someone claiming to be the company's chief financial officer. The CFO requested a secret transaction, sensitive, urgent. The worker was skeptical. Then they were invited to a video conference call. On that call, they saw the CFO. They saw other colleagues they recognized. They heard familiar voices discussing the transaction in detail. They participated in what appeared to be a normal, if unusually sensitive, internal business meeting. Every person on that call was a deepfake. According to the South China Morning Post's reporting on the case and subsequent confirmation by Hong Kong police, the entire video conference, the faces, the voices, the real-time interaction was constructed using artificial intelligence. The finance worker, surrounded by what appeared to be trusted colleagues in a live video meeting, authorized a transfer of $25 million. The money was gone before anyone realized what had happened. According to cybersecurity firm Mandiant's analysis of the Hong Kong case, this represented a qualitative leap in fraud sophistication. The first widely reported instance of real-time, multi-person deepfake video being deployed in a live financial fraud event. Not a pre-recorded fake video, a live, interactive, real-time video call in which every participant except the victim was artificially generated. The technology required to execute that attack in 2024 is, according to Mandiant's research, already more accessible and more capable in 2025 than it was when the attack occurred. According to Gartner's 2025 Cybersecurity Predictions Report, by 2026, an estimated 30% of enterprise security incidents will involve deepfake or AI-generated impersonation as a component of the attack, not a niche threat, not an exotic edge case, a core feature of the fraud landscape that every organization handling significant financial transactions will need to be actively defending against. The $25 million Hong Kong heist was not the peak of this threat. According to every piece of threat intelligence published since that case, it was the beginning of an era. Chapter 4. Why the financial system is losing ground. Here is the uncomfortable truth that the financial industry's public communications consistently understate. The defences are not keeping up. According to KPMG's 2025 Global Banking Fraud Survey, 83% of financial institutions reported an increase in fraud attempts over the prior year. 71% reported that the sophistication of attacks had increased significantly, and 58% reported that their existing fraud detection systems were not adequately equipped to identify AI-generated fraud content. The fundamental problem is architectural. The fraud detection systems that financial institutions rely on were built to identify patterns, unusual transaction amounts, atypical geographic activity, behavioral anomalies that deviate from historical norms. These systems are good at catching the things that look different from normal. AI-enabled fraud is specifically designed to look exactly like normal. When a criminal uses AI to clone an executive's voice and behavior patterns, the fraud is not triggering anomaly detection because it is not anomalous. It looks, sounds, and behaves exactly like legitimate activity because it has been trained on legitimate activity to the point where it is indistinguishable from it. According to research published in the journal Nature Machine Intelligence in 2024, the most advanced deepfake detection algorithms, running on state-of-the-art hardware, are detecting AI-generated content with accuracy rates that sound impressive until you apply them to real-world financial fraud volumes. At scale, even a 92% detection accuracy means that 8% of sophisticated AI fraud attempts pass undetected. 8% of millions of attempts is an enormous amount of successful fraud. According to the Bank for International Settlements' 2024 report on financial system resilience, the asymmetry between offence and defence in AI-enabled financial crime is growing. The criminals are deploying generative AI offensively with no regulatory constraints, no compliance overhead, and a cost structure that improves every time the underlying models are updated. The institutions defending against them are operating under regulatory frameworks, legacy infrastructure, and organisational dynamics that make rapid adaptation structurally difficult. The criminals are running a technology startup, the banks are running a bureaucracy, and in a technology arms race, the startup is winning. Chapter 5: The Human Targets. Who is being hit and how? The most chilling dimension of AI-enabled fraud is not the large institutional attacks. It is the personalised devastation being visited on ordinary individuals, and the specific, calculated cruelty of how these attacks are designed. According to the Federal Trade Commission's 2024 data on impersonation scams, family emergency fraud, where criminals impersonate a relative in distress to extract emergency funds, has evolved into one of the fastest growing AI fraud categories. The grandmother who receives a sobbing phone call from her grandson saying he has been arrested and needs bail money immediately. The husband who receives a terrified voice message from his wife saying she has been in an accident. Those voices are real. They have been cloned from social media videos, from voicemails, from the publicly available digital exhaust of ordinary people's lives. And according to the FTC, the emotional devastation of receiving what sounds exactly like a loved one in crisis makes this category of fraud extraordinarily effective, because the instinct to protect the people you love is faster and stronger than the instinct to verify. According to AARP's 2024 Fraud Watch Network report, adults over 60 lose an estimated $3.4 billion annually to phone and voice-based fraud, a figure that has grown by over 40% since AI voice cloning became commercially accessible. The most vulnerable targets are not those who are least intelligent. They are those who have the most emotional investment in the relationships being impersonated and the strongest cultural instinct to act before asking questions. According to research from the Global Anti-Scam Alliance's 2025 State of Scams report, the average financial loss per AI-assisted fraud victim is now 47% higher than the average loss per victim of traditional fraud methods. The sophistication of the deception does not just increase the probability of success, it increases the scale of each individual attack. because victims who are completely convinced are more willing to take extraordinary steps to comply. And according to the same Global Anti-Scam Alliance research, recovery rates for AI fraud losses are dramatically lower than for conventional fraud. Because by the time the victim realizes what has happened, the money has passed through multiple cryptocurrency accounts, international wire transfers, and jurisdictional boundaries that make law enforcement recovery effectively impossible. Closing chapter: the arms race and what comes next. We're in the early stages of the most consequential arms race in the history of financial crime. And understanding what comes next is not optional for anyone who participates in the modern financial system, which is effectively everyone. According to Deloitte's 2025 Centre for Financial Services report on AI and fraud, the next phase of AI-enabled financial crime will involve autonomous fraud agents, AI systems that not only generate convincing impersonation content, but make real-time strategic decisions about how to adapt when they encounter resistance. Systems that can pivot their approach mid-conversation when they detect skepticism. Systems that can learn from failed attempts and optimize future attacks automatically. Systems that operate continuously, without fatigue, without moral constraint, and at a cost that approaches zero per attempt. According to cybersecurity firm Darktrace's 2025 threat intelligence data, early versions of autonomous social engineering agents have already been detected in the wild, not theoretical, operational. So what is the defense? According to research from MIT's Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Laboratory on fraud-resistant communication systems, the most promising institutional defences involve moving from authentication systems based on what you sound like or look like, which can now be faked, to authentication systems based on what you know or what you physically possess. Multi-factor verification for all significant financial authorizations. Callback verification through independently confirmed contact information. Organization-wide protocols that require out-of-band confirmation for any request that deviates from established process, regardless of how legitimate the requester sounds or appears. According to the Financial Services Information Sharing and Analysis Centre, institutions that have implemented mandatory dual authorization for wire transfers above defined thresholds, combined with voice and video call verification protocols, have seen AI-enabled fraud success rates drop by over 70%. The technology cannot yet defeat a well-designed human verification protocol. It can only defeat the absence of one. For individuals, according to AARP's Fraud Watch Network recommendations and the FTC's Consumer Protection Guidance, the single most important defense is a pre-established family verification code, a specific word or phrase known only to your immediate family that must be provided in any emergency communication before financial action is taken. It sounds almost absurdly simple. According to the data, it works because the AI clone does not know the code, and the criminal operating it cannot guess it. The financial system is losing ground, not because the defenders are incompetent, because the offense has been handed a weapon of unprecedented sophistication that scales infinitely, costs almost nothing, and improves automatically every time the underlying AI models are updated. The criminals did not build this technology. They just learned to use it faster than the institutions supposed to protect us learned to defend against it. And the most dangerous thing you can do right now is assume that because you have never been targeted, you are not a target. According to every piece of threat intelligence published in 2025, you are. Everyone is. The only question is whether the fraud attempt that reaches you finds a verification protocol in its way, or nothing at all. The phone will ring, the voice will be familiar, the urgency will be real. What you do in that moment is the only defense that matters. If this changed how you think about trust in the digital age, share it with someone who needs to hear it before they get that call. Subscribe for more investigations into the systems shaping the world you live in. And drop a comment below. Have you or someone you know encountered AI fraud already?